Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the show. We're back for another episode of Woo Fantasy.
Woo!
And the very reluctant woo in the background was the always co-host, Mr. Nick Heffley, fresh off his week-long circuit of wedding festivity parties going around. It's the Heffley wedding tour of 2019. We're on the circuit, ladies and gentlemen. He's been packing in the mileage as he's been visiting people and getting ready for the wedding, which is 5 weeks.
5 weeks away.
It's the nerves are building up.
There's nerves.
No nerves.
Ready to get this thing done.
Yeah, I would be too. Yeah, I've been there before. Might as well just, got to get to the finish line. At this point now, it's basically the same. It's old hat every single day anyways. So now you just got to put add the last name to Mrs. Heffley, soon to be.
That's right.
So anyways, right. How are we doing there?
Doing great, man. Just ready for the week ahead, dude. It's a 1 week closer to fantasy football season. I was actually messaging Dr. Harwood earlier, getting paid up for this year's festivities in Bowling Green. So it's gonna be here. What we got? Let's see, I think it's 3 months to the day today, isn't it?
From what I saw, it was until our big weekend in Bowling Green.
August 17th. Sorry,
8 days, I believe, was the countdown clock that I saw.
We're getting close.
Yeah, so we're getting there. The big weekend in Bowling Green, Kentucky, where, of course, this show is a big sponsor of that weekend's festivities at the SBFFC main event in Bowling Green, Kentucky, which we'll go ahead and quick plug that, sbffc.com, if you want to get registered and get you a team set up for the big main event on that Saturday. Also, still taking teams for our league on the Friday night before. So if you're kind of wanting to get your feet wet and jump in, we will be there as well. We've got teams.
Got a format change.
Got a format change this year. Going to a kind of a mini main event is what we're going to go ahead and call that. Not as many teams as the big league on Saturday, but in previous years we've done two different leagues, a head-to-head format league, and we've done a total points league as well. And kind of decided this year we were going to kind of roll it out there and make it more of a strict head-to-head and try to get a little bit more involved with some of the people that are going to be in town anyways. So I'm excited for it. Just another head-to-head format league that we're involved in. I mean, I'm a big proponent in total points leagues myself. I like competing the nose just as much as the head-to-head. You kind of get to the redundancy of head-to-head formats, so it's nice to throw a little curveball in there every once in a while and try some different formats out.
No, absolutely. I've done well in that points format. I did not do well last year, but first 2 years I was in, I did pretty good. I like having that, just something different out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's like why we do IDP leagues that we're in. That's why we do the Dynasty League that we've been in for 2 decades now. So
it ain't that much, man. Don't date us that.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting there.
This will be the 16th year.
Yeah, it's getting up there in age. I mean, it's when your original roster finally retires from the NFL, that makes you feel like your Dynasty League is almost in need of a reset at that point. So
somebody still got Tom Brady. That might be the only original player. You had Peyton Manning. That's been a couple of years.
Peyton Manning for his entire run in the NFL. That's how old that league was. So anyway, speaking of dynasty formats, that's what we're gonna kind of touch base with a little bit today. The recent rookie mock draft that took place with the writers from RotoBaller.com. Had a crew of the guys get together and put together a 10 team. I will stress that a 10 team rookie mock draft was thrown together here just a little over a week ago, and that's what we're we're jumping in and gonna overview a little bit of the draft, some things that we like and dislike from that draft, and player movement, guys that are coming up and down the board, and some just our take on how these players are shaking out as we're getting ready for the rookie drafts and dynasty drafts that are coming up. Whether you're in, you might be doing a startup this year, might be your first time tackling a dynasty league and getting one started up. These are going to be some of the player names you're going to see filtered in. You're going to treat it just like any other redraft league, just a little more premium to the younger skill position guys. When you're starting
exactly. I mean, you don't want to take a guy like LeSean McCoy as high as he would go in a normal redraft league. I mean, you definitely got to temper your expectations, but then again, at some point, it just becomes a value situation.
Yeah, exactly. You're always trying to tap into some value when it comes to, especially to the dynasty leagues. You want to grab a guy that's going to be helpful for you for many years to come, not just for 1 year, like we see with a lot of the redrafts that we're all in. So.
Oh yeah, well, and I think we got our highest viewership on the NFL draft show we did a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think the appetite's out there, man. I think that's why we're doing the show here. So guys, if y'all are out there, if y'all have not started a dynasty league up, let me tell you, right now it is easily one of the most fun leagues that we do. I mean, we're trading off draft picks 2-3 years down the line. I mean, I know it's fun for me because you get guys who maybe have been on the downturn or maybe on the come up, assessing a value. You got guys trading off stuff everywhere. We have, I'm going to say, at least 10 trades a year go down in this league, everywhere from during the draft to off season. Right now, I've engaged in some trade talks with some teams out there. It's one of those things where literally the whole year round, you can be doing fantasy football. So I'm a big proponent. If you're out there, if you've not started a dynasty league, feel free to message us. We can easily be happy to tell you how we set our rules up and everything and help you with yours.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different sites that are out there that you can jump on and throw together your dynasty leagues on as well. I mean, not your more popular sites like the ESPNs, the NFL.coms, CBS Sports. I'm not really big proponents, and they don't really cater to the dynasty crowd as much as say like my fantasy league, the one we've been on for years. That's the site that we use for a lot of our leagues. So a lot of the other sites you've probably not jumped in on yet. RT Sports is another one that's out there you can kind of get involved with. I mean, there's plenty of other sites other than the big name honchos out there. So get with us. Shoot us a message to the show. We'll give you a heads up and let you know where to head off to. Some of the better ones to get into and get your dynasties ready to go out there. But that's what we're going to tackle here. Like I said, 10-team rookie mock from the guys at RotoBaller. We're going to kind of go through this first round, just kind of name off some of the picks real quick. And right off the bat, sparks much debate for me just based on how my rankings are set up. But you got N'Keal Harry right off the bat, top pick overall in this rookie draft. Are you in for N'Keal Harry, or how are you feeling on that first pick?
I mean, obviously, again, it's gonna be where your team is, kind of coming in. If you loaded at running back, crappy at wide receiver, maybe this first guy had that situation. Ideally, I think the wide receivers are pretty deep in a draft like this. There is no way I'm not going one of the top running backs at the first spot overall. If I need a wide receiver that bad, I'm trading back, maybe 2 picks with the guy at, 3 or 4 and getting some extra value back. To me, again, I like N'Keal Harry. I don't like him number 1.
No. I've kind of written about N'Keal Harry a little bit in some of the articles that I've put on RotoBaller.com, but do I like N'Keal Harry as a talent? Yes, he was my number 1 receiver all throughout the process. But do I like him first overall in a rookie draft when you've got players out there like a Josh Jacobs, like a David Montgomery that are probably going to be key contributors? Not even really in dynasty leagues, but even redraft leagues this year. How could you go away from those guys at a position that's really more spread thin, whereas the wide receiver position, like you mentioned yourself, is there's a lot of depth of talent out there. So yeah, I would have easily gone Josh Jacobs at 1.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So you got N'Keal Harry 1, Jacobs 2, Miles Sanders 3, David Montgomery 4, DK Metcalf 5, just to give you an idea of the first round.
Yep.
Noah Fant 6, Mecole Hardman 7, Parris Campbell 8, AJ Brown 9, Hawkinson 10.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm all about, to me, I think, again, and we've talked about it, the other week whenever we did the pod there. I mean, I think Jacobs, at least for this year, probably has to be given the nod at the number 1 pick. I don't know who else, especially after the injury to Isaiah Crowell, who else is going to be in line. I don't think Doug Martin is going to, touch the ball that much, or at least that much to be effective there. So to me, it's either between, Jacobs or David Montgomery for me at number 1.
Yeah. I mean, you see, and that's probably going to be the biggest thing that I'll point out over these first couple of rounds is, we mentioned, like I just did a second ago, how spread thin this position is at running back. You get the quick 3-player run at running back right after N'Keal Harry selected 1 overall. You get Josh Jacobs, you get Miles Sanders, you get Montgomery, and I'm okay with the mixture and how those 3 come off the board. I'd have personally went Montgomery over Miles Sanders myself, but
100%.
After that point, you're looking at another 13 picks come off the board before the next running back is taken at pick 10, or actually, it was at pick 8 of round 2.
2.8 Damien Harris.
Yeah, Damien Harris, the next running back taken at 2.8 in round 2. I mean, that goes to show you just how quick the value goes off the board at this running back spot in rookie drafts this year, just based off of landing spot. That's something that we keep talking about and keep hammering the point home. These guys went to teams where it's going to be a head scratcher, and you're not going to be able to expect a lot of production out of these guys over the first year or two while they're in the league. So those 3 players coming off the board in round 1, they are a lot more of a premium than you're going to see with the running backs throughout the remainder of that draft.
Yeah. So you would rank it. You're ranking those 3 guys: Jacobs, Montgomery, Sanders. Is that what you're going?
Yeah, I think for the long term, I believe I would have Montgomery slightly ahead of Sanders, just because I know the propensity of the Eagles' backfield and how Peterson likes to use his backs. There's a lot of spreading the touches out. Miles Sanders has the talent to overtake the field there and really kind of bring home a majority share of carries and touches in that backfield, but I mean, it's a crowded backfield right now, and especially in year 1, you think that it's going to be a situation where they're going to spread their guys out. It's going to be similar to like what you saw Kerryon Johnson last year in Detroit. He's overwhelmingly the better player over LeGarrette Blount, but they still wanted to keep his legs fresh, mix him in and out, don't overwork him early in the year. That's probably what you're going to see out of Sanders this year.
Yeah, I'm thinking the exact same way. I think though too. I don't think they would have traded Jordan Howard. Like what they did if they were going to at least use him 30 to 40% of the time. And obviously, it's going to depend on what he actually does when he gets in there. I mean, the Eagles do have a pretty good offensive line. I mean, they still got Adams in there in the mix. I mean, Adams looked really good for a good, month and a half stretch last year.
Yeah.
And granted, he came off the end, but he got hurt. So, I think for me, Miles Sanders is definitely behind Jacobs and Montgomery for me, especially year 1. Now, looking into the future in a true dynasty format, I think he ranks slightly higher on my board looking forward. But I think, if you're going anywhere outside of these 3 guys in your first 3 picks, something's wrong. You're not dynastying it right.
Yeah, I mean, in Dynasty, the nature and the validity of the running back position is really, it goes by the wayside so quick in Dynasty formats. I mean, one year you could have 4 to 5 deep on your roster of guys that are really contributing week in and week out, and then you come through the offseason coming into the next year, bam, your depth's gone, your ability to compete in that league is gone. So for me, running back is just such a premium that you have to continually attack in Dynasty formats with each rookie draft that you have in, year out.
100%. Well, and look at it too. I mean, from a dynasty perspective, I had the same thing, happen to me a couple years ago. I had Ray Rice. I had, some of these other top backs.
Who was
Ray
that?
Rice. Ray Rice. Yeah,
Oh,
hadn't
man,
heard that name.
Yeah, I forgot about that guy. That was the dude that
Yeah.
the Deontay Wildered his girlfriend in an elevator out in Las Vegas.
I don't know who Deontay
Yeah, I was going to say,
is.
yeah, Nick is not a very good. He doesn't keep up with boxing very much. But yes, Deontay Wilder is your heavyweight champion of the world who had a fight last night. Cold cocked a guy in round 1, put him on the canvas, retained his belt. Was a nasty knockout. And if you've not seen it on social media at all today, go check it out. Yes, Ray Rice.
Check that out.
Ray Rice with the heavyweight knockout a few years back, yes.
But I had Ray Rice led my group of running backs that I had for a while, and all of a sudden in one offseason, he's gone. He's done. He's not back. I kept him around on my roster a little while, just hoping that he would get reinstated. Did he actually get? He did get reinstated. But I don't think any team wanted to touch him.
Right? Yeah, he was
no team wanted to touch him. Yeah.
I mean, that's what you're seeing with Kareem Hunt now too. So at least he is signed and back on a roster. But let's be honest here. The difference between Kareem Hunt and Ray Rice and those incidents were, for me, really night and day between the two. So I think that's why you're seeing Kareem Hunt back in the league so quickly, as opposed to Ray Rice, who was also on the downside of his career by that point as well too. So
he was a little bit, but he had still produced that last year that he was in enough to at least still be the lead dog for the Ravens there. But I think it's one of those things you have got to keep attacking. And here's the other thing too, we don't really mention a lot, but the guys like Philip Lindsay out there, the Philip Lindsay of the world are more rare than they are common. I mean, you're much more likely to find waiver wire wide receiver out there that just comes out of nowhere and does something as opposed to a running back. I mean, the running back, a lot of times number 1, number 2 guys are owned in the league. You don't have a lot of 3rd and 4th and 5th string wide receivers on teams that are owned in fantasy. I mean, there are plenty of guys that come out of the woodwork, depending on usage and depending on injuries. Whereas, if somebody goes down at the running back position, chances are somebody's got the backup depending on where.
Yeah, I mean, it's Philip Lindsay is an undrafted free agent last year. After the draft, Broncos pick him up, local product. Kid barely makes the roster through training camp, and then comes out and becomes a near running back 1 in fantasy throughout the entire season. The last couple of weeks of the season, he missed the last game of the year, injured in week 16. I think the lack of stats there those last 2 to 3 weeks of the year is really what cost him from finishing as a running back 1 in redraft leagues last year. But I mean, I'll speak from experience. I mean, I picked him up week 2 in a league last year. Actually picked him up in a keeper league that we're in as well. I mean, grabbed him early, and he helped me. He propelled me to a championship in one league last year. So, I mean, that is a rarity where you find a guy like that. And a name that we kind of keep mentioning here and there on this show is Bruce Anderson. Tampa Bay, same thing with Tampa Bay. Picked him up, unrestricted free agent, undrafted free agent after the draft, and he's coming into a situation in a backfield where if he shows out, he can take that role and he can run with it. So that is definitely a name I keep telling people to keep an eye on is Bruce Anderson in Tampa Bay. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a rarity. You see that coming out of nowhere like that. You just have to be aware of your depth charts and aware of players that are out there. You're going to kind of see that again. I think you're going to see that again with Pittsburgh this year too. James Conner's going to be the overwhelming favorite to get drafted. He'll be off the board in round 2 in redrafts, but if you don't grab Jaylen Samuels, you're probably doing this game wrong, because Jaylen Samuels is going to be a guy that's going to filter in as well and provide a lot of points too. But then they go and draft Benny Snell. So
you got to scratch your head a little bit.
So then you have to wonder what the Steelers are thinking with this backfield. Do they just want to add depth? Do they not really truly believe in James Conner? Are they already overlooking their draft pick last year with Jaylen Samuels? So a little
always things to keep in mind.
Always some things to keep in mind there. That's a bit of a could be a nuisance to fantasy owners this year that go ahead and spend that early draft capital on James Conner. So Getting back to the rookies, like we mentioned, there's that big drop off at the running back tier where we got to Damien Harris there towards the end of round number 2. He was then followed by Darrell Henderson, the Rams now pass catching running back that's going to sit behind Todd Gurley, and then an interesting pick for me, Darwin Thompson, the drafted running back for Kansas City. You've got Darwin Thompson, you've got James Williams that are going to be competing for some time in that backfield behind Damien Williams. For me, right now, until we get into training camp, it's a coin toss for me. I don't know what to expect between those running backs. I do like Damien Williams. They've got Carlos Hyde as that veteran presence behind Williams. So now you got these two rookies trying to put their stamp in this backfield. How are you looking at a pick like a Darwin Thompson in round 2?
I think it's a wasted pick. I'd rather have somebody like a Devin Singletary, maybe Raekwon Armstead, who could ascend to the top a little quicker.
Yep.
Kansas City seems to be like one of those places for me anyway that I could see them maybe next year getting a running back in round 1, or if things don't work out with Damien Williams, them going out and either A, trading, or B, signing a big time free agent to come out. So somebody like Darwin Thompson, not even on my radar. I think Damien Williams, for what he did last year, I don't know that I necessarily trust him 100%, but I trust that offense.
Yeah, that was just one for me that was. Yeah, as soon as I saw that pick on this board, I was like, whew, that's a bit of a reach, because then you have
a bit of a head scratcher.
You have a lot of players, running backs especially, coming off the board over the course of the next 2 rounds that I would have probably valued a little bit higher than Darwin Thompson. But I get it.
And then,
you're taking a shot in the dark here. If he hits and becomes the guy like Damien Williams did in Kansas City late in the year last year, then you've hit a home run with the pick there. So you take your shots.
There's so many guys for him to go in front of.
Yeah.
In that offense. And again, if things don't work out with Damien Williams in KC, they're going to get somebody else. Like, Hyde is not that good, but he's good enough.
Yeah.
To at least get something. Again, I don't see Darwin Thompson as being dynamic enough to be able to do much of it.
Yeah. I'm as like I said, I think there's a little bit of talent there, but I wouldn't discount the presence of James Williams as well. I think he can factor in somewhat in this by season's end if something were to happen and something shakes out wrong in that backfield. But some other picks in round 2 there. You finally have Kyler Murray coming off the board, second pick of the second round. Second round pick for Kyler Murray. You okay with his landing spot here in a 10-teamer?
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think the offense that he's now found himself in, I think he is in an offense that is going to play to his strengths. I think he's a little early in round 2. If you base it on a 12-team league, he's the last pick of round 1.
Yeah.
I think people are starting to see the offense that he's in is probably going to be a good offense that caters to his strengths a little bit. So, yeah, I think that's a good pick. I think there's some running back wide receivers that I would still probably take ahead of Kyler Murray, but depending on where your team's at, if you're like me and my Dynasty League team last year and come out of it and, kind of needing a quarterback, you go ahead and get that guy and maybe a year or 2 down the line, maybe it'll be somebody. Kyler Murray, I think, is the one guy, though, the one quarterback I think in this draft that could have a lot of value here.
Yeah. I had him ranked, I think, right there at 12-13 on my overall board, so he kind of fell right there around the spot where I had him ranked myself. So for me, the pick makes sense. I'm okay with him being an end first round, early second round pick in a 12-team league, so definitely okay with that right there. He's sandwiched in between 2 other Arizona Cardinals. Andy Isabella, first pick of the second round, and then Hakeem Butler, third pick of the second round. So you have a run on Arizona Cardinals there. We keep talking about the offense and how we think that it's going to turn around and be a lot better this year. Between the 2 receivers, Butler, Isabella, who has the better early 2 to 3 years in the NFL.
I mean, I think Isabella is going to be one of those guys that is going to be there all the time, kind of a thing. Kind of like a Cole. I think he'll be a little better, but he is Cole Beasley.
Yeah.
He's a guy that is going to be. He'll probably go out 1 year and have 900 yards and 6 touchdowns, and then another year he's going to come out and not do well. I'm a big fan of Hakeem Butler. I loved him at Iowa State. I think he's a big receiver. He's somebody that I think Kyler Murray will love throwing the ball to. So I think the higher ceiling for me is definitely Hakeem Butler. He's the guy I would definitely be going with in that dynasty format.
Yeah, I think there's a road to Hakeem Butler being good. I think it's going to take a couple of years for that to actually come to fruition, though. You got Larry Fitzgerald finishing out his career, probably his last year this year. Christian Kirk as well on the depth chart, basically playing the same position as Hakeem Butler. So, you've got some guys, some vets that are blocking and impeding his way to a heavy amount of targets, but Andy Isabella's going to be a guy that's going to plug in and play that slot and come away with the 50 to 55 catches every single year. It's not going to really be something that's sexy, but he's going to get the job done for you in certain weeks, especially in dynasty formats. He's not going to be a guy that want to plug in, week out in a redraft format. He's worth a pick in a redraft format to me, but a late round flyer. But I mean, he'll get some work done for you. I don't know about touchdowns. I figured, he's a guy that you're probably going to see capped at like 4 touchdowns will be his highest total that he'll probably have in a season. So,
and I mean, for me, in Dynasty, and I think it's one of those things, give me the guy that has the potential to score the touchdowns all day rather as opposed to, hey, I'm going to go out and get 4 catches for 30 yards. I can get those guys off the waiver wire. I could care less about those guys. Give me a guy who has a chance to be a superstar. He may not turn out to be that guy, but I would much rather have that guy over a guy like Andy Isabella, who, I mean, if he were in a better offense, he could be a Wes Welker type, but I don't think in this offense it doesn't bode well for him having huge numbers.
Yeah, I mean, he's a diminutive little guy. He's just going to be one of those little sparky guys out there on the field just running around all over the place. In a way, I think it's Arizona's attempt to replace John Brown from, the Bruce Arians days. He's super fast, too, so don't discredit the fact that he can't get down the field and get past some defenders. So, I mean, there's chances and possibilities of him becoming a deep threat, but I think his true value is going to lie as a PPR asset for some teams. So if your dynasty format's a PPR, of course Andy Isabella's going to come up the board a little bit more than you would see in a standard scoring league. So middle part of that second round is where you got some of the more, I guess, highly touted wide receivers that we were talking about heading into the draft, and that is you got Marquise Brown to the Ravens at 2-4, Deebo Samuel 2-5, Kelvin Harmon, which we continue to talk about how he just free fall down the draft during the draft weekend, and then JJ Arcega-Whiteside 2-7. Right there in the middle of this draft here in the second round. So out of those 4 guys there, who's going to have the highest value for you long term?
Go ahead and give me Deebo Samuel.
Damn it.
Long-term value.
Damn it.
He's an IR. Look, Deebo, Friday. We're just going to nickname him Friday. No, Deebo, I mean, you got the offensive situation. You got an opening there for a guy to really come in and take over, whereas J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is going to have, some other guys to be able to contend with, like a Zach Ertz.
Yep.
And granted, you still got somebody for Deebo Samuel could contend with catching in there to George Kittle. But, we haven't necessarily seen, what that relationship is going to be like for Jimmy Garoppolo and George Kittle.
Yeah.
It was good, at the end of 2017, but will that be something that, is going to be something that prevails here in 2019? I don't know. I do like Arcega-Whiteside, though.
I do
he still has Alshon Jeffrey to go up against. But Deebo, if you gave me the choice, I'm definitely drafting Deebo over Whiteside at this point.
Yeah. And which by the way, you did mention the movie Friday, but that you do like that's legit the reason why his name is Debo, right?
Is it really?
Yeah, his
I
mother.
didn't know. Honestly, I did not know if it was a nickname.
No, like his mother. That's
great.
legit the reason his name is Debo is because of that movie. I mean, that's just it was something that you find out as you're researching a player, and it's just like, nah, that can't be the case, and then you find out that that's actually for real the reason that's his name, and then you're like, man, well, I guess I failed as a parent in naming my child. I should have come up with something a lot cooler. So,
Cinnamon, that I think should have been destined for a very certain role in life.
You're already locked into your role in life and your job down the road. So, anyways, Marquise Brown, they're at 2-4 in this room here. I mean, we keep touching on him. There was a lot of people that were high on Marquise Brown headed in from college. Of course, the foot injury is something to monitor, especially early on in his career, to see how he does in training camp, things like that, see how that injury holds up. But it's such a horrible offensive fit, and you can basically tell that just by the sheer fact of how he fell down this draft board. So for me, you're talking about a guy that came off the board in round 2, but it was drafted as a round 1 guy. I don't see any value, in a Marquise Brown, especially early on in any dynasty format. So,
yeah, for me, he's one of those guys that I don't particularly like the situation for wide receiver there, but this has all the makings of, one of those, like, I don't really think it's going to be, a good situation. I'm going to pass him up. And he's just one of those guys that I don't know why, but I think he's going to come out and do well. Maybe not immediately, but I think Marquise Brown is going to be one of those guys that, we overlook because of the situation and how wide receivers fared last year with Lamar Jackson, and he's going to come out and do something. I don't know why, but I would definitely be drafting him over, some other guys. Not over necessarily Deebo Samuel or Arcega-Whiteside, but
no.
I would put him a little. I might rank him just a little bit higher just because of the talent that he showed.
Yeah, so just kind of gauging him towards some of the other receivers that have already kind of come off the board in this draft is jumping back into round 1. You had Metcalf second off the board at 1-5, Mecole Hardman 1-7, Parris Campbell at 1-8, AJ Brown at 1-9. We're obviously not going to be drafting Marquise Brown over any of those talents, but
I could trade. I would probably draft him over AJ Brown.
You would draft Marquise Brown over AJ Brown?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow, I can't.
Absolutely,
I cannot.
Absolutely,
sign up for that.
And the reason why is they have Corey Davis. I think Corey Davis is the guy in Tennessee. I like AJ Brown.
Could be.
I think he landed at the wrong spot. I think I would much more like AJ Brown had he gone to. Any one of the other wide receiver situations. I don't like AJ Brown in Tennessee. The ability of the offense there, the passing offense, the wide receivers is not good.
Yeah.
And you've got Delaney Walker coming back this year. I do not like AJ Brown that much. So I honestly would draft let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 guys we talked about: Hakeem Butler, Marquise Brown, Deebo, Arcega-Whiteside. I would draft all of them over AJ Brown.
Woo. All right, that's giving me a good heads up in our rookie draft.
No problem. I don't. Yeah, I've got a later pick. Trust me. AJ Brown will not be off the board. I don't know. He may be. We got a lot of Titans fans.
I was going to say, we have a lot of Titans fans in our group. So AJ Brown will be an early, mid-round 1 pick amongst this group. I'd almost be willing to put money on it. But we both don't. We're not in love with AJ Brown in Tennessee as far as a fit, but. In the end, talent's going to win out more than anything. And say Mariota's gone after this year, and then they go a whole completely new route at the quarterback spot next year. Who's to say we can't have a whole nother new type of offense for the Titans in the course of year 2, year 3 for him, to where they really utilize 2 receivers, and he can become a scoring threat. That's something that I'm looking at in terms of A.J. Brown's future. Yeah, I don't like him as a Titan, but there's some possibility with him. Like I said, talent wins out in the end, and I think he can. Would I had loved him to actually go to the Chiefs, like I'd projected for him to go to the Chiefs.
Oh man,
that would have been a home run. But
he'd be number one overall.
You're looking at it just feels like that they had their heart set on drafting Hardman to replace potentially Tyreek Hill in the offense. They already had their mind made up on that selection. I don't think they intended on A.J. Brown being there, so it's probably a situation where, all right, we've got our guy, we're going to draft our guy at this particular spot. We're not going to move the board at all just because this guy's here. I mean, to me, that's a bad way of doing business, but it is what it is. But drafting Marquise Brown over A.J. Brown, I'm not going to sign up for that one at all.
I'm on it all day.
I just can't because the guy's going to be he's going to be so inconsistent with Lamar Jackson and that Ravens offense. He's going to have one good week and disappear for 2 to 3. So it's just for me, I can't give myself that headache, especially in a dynasty format. If I've got other players on that roster and I'm deep at that position, Marquise Brown's probably going to be a player that's not going to see the light of day in my starting rotation very much. So
yeah, and I think this all goes back to draft format and your dynasty league. I think this is a key cog in the difference between your team and my team is that, and I think for probably a lot of you out there, I would rather have a higher upside guy than Marquise Brown, who I think could hit and could be good and could be a top 10 player in a given week, rather than A.J. Brown. I just don't see that happening anytime soon. Maybe he will, but I'm going for the home run. Give me championships. I don't want consistency, at least in those terms. Give me championships. Give me the guy that's going to go out there and has a chance to be, a number 1 or number 2 in the league.
Yeah, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt there, but for me, I'm just that'll be a contentious spot where we're going to disagree on a player for sure. But mentioning those guys in the first round as well, just kind of doubling back a little bit. Parris Campbell is a guy that I'm high on. DK Metcalf, not so much. So, what are your feelings on those two, just to kind of put a bow on the first round receivers?
Oh, I'm pretty. I think for me, I think Parris Campbell, and I've been high on Parris Campbell since before the draft. Obviously, depending on landing spot, he'll land it in a great spot. So for me, I'm ranking Parris Campbell and DK Metcalf. I like DK Metcalf. I love the landing spot. Doug Baldwin is gone now. I think he's going to be the man, or if not, he's going to be damn close to it. DK Metcalf is landed in a great spot. So both of those guys, I like solid first rounders in a dynasty league. Solid, number 4 probably type guys, number 5 guys in a redraft.
Yeah, it's a Tyler Lockett show there in Seattle, especially this year.
I just don't trust Tyler Lockett.
I didn't coming into this last year, but he had such a great year in that offense. It's going to be kind of hard to ignore coming up. He'll be a player too in redraft, which as the course of the summer carries along, when we start talking a little bit more about ADP and things like that, Tyler Lockett's going to be a guy that I'm going to keep my eye on and see where he's going, how his movement is along the draft board. But yeah, I think DK Metcalf year 1 is going to be a player that's going to be he's going to be another one, boomer bust type play like a Marquise Brown. He's going to have a week where he'll give you 2 touchdowns on like 5 catches, but then he'll come out the next week and give you a 1 for 7 performance. So
that's where you got to pay attention. Any good fantasy manager out there on a week to week, you're not playing a best ball league. You come out there on a week-to-week basis and you look at the quarterback matchup. You look at what you think game flow is going to be.
Yep.
Russell Wilson is one of the top 5 to 10 fantasy quarterbacks in fantasy football. He's going to throw the ball. So that's why I like DK Metcalf's upside. You're gonna go from last year where you had Doug Baldwin getting covered by the number 1 corner to now you're going to get a guy like DK Metcalf who's going to be getting the number 2 corner against him as opposed to something else. I think DK Metcalf, is going to have a really good year.
Yeah, it's just, I've not been in love with the player at all throughout the draft process. I think he was a workout monster, but if you go to look at his play on the field and his measurables and all of his video practicing and things like that, then I mean, it's for me. I think it's going to be a little bit of a smoke screen for DK Metcalf.
I think it's just going to be an opportunity situation. Like I said, Lockett's going to be covered up by the number one corner from the other team.
Actually,
they do have some good corners in that division.
I think Lockett's going to play. You're going to see Lockett play a lot in the slot this year. I think, just to take advantage of matchups. So you're going to see David Moore lined up on the outside, and you're going to see, Metcalf lined up on the opposite outside. And they're going to be the players that are going to be lined up in more difficult cornerback situations. So. Whereas, Lockett's going to be a guy that's going to be running all over the field. So, for me, Metcalf is just doomed to be a guy that's going to have a low target share in this offense. And for me, I mean, the production is not going to be there to warrant the draft pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued to see where DK Metcalf starts to go in some of these redraft leagues. Yeah. How high is it going to be? There's definitely a too high. I mean, if there's a certain spot. Yeah, and I don't know if he's going to. I mean, there's no way that I'm going to take him in my top 36 wide receivers. There's no way. That's way too high for somebody like him.
Too high.
But you start. If you load up on, if you get quarterback, if you're going to other positions first and you're looking for a home run at wide receiver, to me he's not a bad toss it out. Let's see what happens kind of guy.
Yeah, too high. Who gives a shit? He's gone.
Too high.
You gotta throw the major league references out
there
every once in a while. Going through, we'll just kind of touch round 3 real quick too. Justice Hill leads off round 3 here, first pick. Then selected to go to the Baltimore Ravens as he's going to be kind of a utility guy, I think, in that backfield, more of that pass catching Darren Sproles type role. Really quick, shifty back coming out of the backfield, followed by Miles Boykin as well, going Baltimore 3-2. Then we got finally our third tight end coming off the board, Irv Smith, 3-3 to the Minnesota Vikings. Darius Slayton, followed by Benny Snell, who we already mentioned, Terry McLaurin, Devin Singletary, Dwayne Haskins, finally the second quarterback off the board, Jalen Hurd, and then Deontay Johnson to the Pittsburgh Steelers to wrap up round 3. Favorite pick out of this group?
In dynasty format, man, I'm gonna cop out, and it's gonna be a tie for me. I'm going some kind of a mix between Terry McLaurin and Devin Singletary are my two guys there. McLaurin, I just think, with the aforementioned Dwayne Haskins, he's got that relationship going back to Ohio State. If Dwayne Haskins comes out and takes that job, I'd definitely rather have McLaurin over Kelvin Harmon. There's already that relationship there. Devin Singletary, I think, is just it's literally a situation. Like we talked about earlier, LeSean McCoy is getting older. They have Frank Gore. They've got some ancient guys on their team. Devin Singletary is just the next guy up. So I don't know that he'll have much of an impact this year, but I think next year could be one of those guys that comes in and does well. So I definitely like those two picks.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the Singletary pick. I mean, there's already been talk that the Bills could release McCoy at some point during the summer. Now, if that happens, that remains to be seen. But there's a possibility.
He would shoot up quick into round 1 if that happens.
Yeah, he's gonna fly up boards really quick because he offers more to this offense and how things are going to shake out right now more than a Chris Ivory does. I mean, T.J. Yeldon, we know he's going to be locked in as the third down, the pass catching back in this backfield. So, to me, I think Devin Singletary, that's probably his forte is as a pass catcher. I don't think he's going to find much success as an early down back. He's going to be more. He really, to me, is more of a change of pace back. So, if he gets put in and he kind of splits time between Yeldon and Singletary at some point during the 2019 season, then yeah, there's going to be value with Singletary pretty early on in a dynasty format too. So, but I mean, for me, the Deontay Johnson pick is going to be the one to monitor. Him lasting all the way to round 3, I think, is probably going to be something that'll change as we get through the next month and a half. I think you're gonna start to see his name rise up a little bit on boards. I've mentioned it before, even on this podcast, of how I think he's already going to be in competition with James Washington in Pittsburgh, and I foresee Johnson being kind of a vital piece in that offense. And he's not going to replace Antonio Brown, but he's sure going to get a lot more of those targets that were going his way. He's going to get a lot of them coming to him, and I think Deontay Johnson has a chance to be one of the kind of the standout performers of this wide receiver class here within the next first 5 years of their career. So I do.
He's a guy I just want to see him. I want to see him in the preseason. He's a guy I want to see. What does he look like out there? Is Big Ben looking at him? Does Big Ben even play? Which another thing I don't think you and I have touched on since we may have never even brought it up on the pod, but I know one thing Brandon and I are big harpers on. You look back the last couple of years, the offenses week 1, 2, even into week 3. You used to see number one offenses in preseason, quite often out there. But you don't see a lot of that anymore. You see a lot of, we'll play 1 or 2 series. It used to be week 2 of the preseason, you'd see 2 quarters. Week 3 of the preseason, you'd see 3 quarters. You don't see that anymore. And I think that's a big reason a lot of offenses have not gelled, until well into the season like they have in years past, which completely upset me. But I know there's the big, thing like Michael Vick got hurt the 1 year in the preseason, or Chad Pennington, that, these guys shouldn't be playing preseason this many preseason.
Yeah, I mean, Darius Geis last year. Yeah, early on in the training
Deontay Johnson.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
Deontay Johnson is one of those guys I'd love to see.
Yeah. I think you're going to get a pretty good look at him early on throughout training camp. I think he's going to get a lot of time out there. They're going to want to see what they got in the kid, and I think he's going to come through in a big way. So that would be my 2 picks. I think they're in that 3rd round. 4th round, we'll jump through there too as well. It's kind of a mixed bag of selections here in the 4th round. You got Bryce Love going to pick 4-1, Washington Redskins. Jay Sternberger going to attempt to fill that tight end void there in Green Bay. Raquel Armstead, the favorite of Mr. Heffley here on this show, going 4-3 as the Jacksonville Jaguars number 2 back. Then we have a run on quarterbacks here. We got Drew Lock to the Broncos, Daniel Jones to the Giants, Jared Stidham to the Patriots, which I cannot wrap my head around. Kahale Waring to the Texans, Dexter Williams, Green Bay running back, another Green Bay running back, Riley Ridley to your Chicago Bears, and then Alexander Madison to round things off there, going to the Minnesota Vikings at 4-10. So same thing here. What I know you're going to like the Raquel Armstead pick, even lasting in the 4th round. Is there another player you're kind of keeping your eye on here in that 4th round?
Obviously, I like Armstead. He's coming in. I think he's got a big chance to do some things. Especially depending on what happens with that running back situation.
Yep.
The other guy that I'm looking at is, I would say probably Warren, the tight end for Houston. He could be a guy that comes in. I think they just released what's his face, Ryan Griffin.
Right after he beat up the hotel room in Nashville.
After his Nashville incident. Yeah. So I mean, I think he's going into a great situation for him. I mean, he's a guy that obviously you're not getting him as your number 1 tight end, but in a redraft league, especially, maybe a guy that I take a look at. Maybe a good developmental guy on a dynasty league team. Like this. So for me, I would say he held the higher upside as opposed to. I'm a Bears fan. I like Riley Ridley. I think he's going to be good, but there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense, and I don't know that I see Riley Ridley being anything that tells me that he's going to be in the mix anytime in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I mean that's a guy. He'll be lucky to get 3 targets a game over the course of the first 2 years in the league. So for me, I like the Madison pick, just based on Dalvin Cook injury history and just underwhelmingness on the field last year. You have to figure, he was coming back from the ACL surgery, but they got rid of Latavius Murray, so Madison's coming in to fulfill that role. I think there's going to be a chance that Madison can kind of come in and give you some good weeks here and there in year 1. Sneaks into the end zone here and there. I mean, Dalvin Cook gets hurt, he's the next guy up, and that's automatically an RB2 in redraft leagues. So if he's not already drafted as a handcuff to Cook in seasonal formats, then I mean he's going to be one of those guys you're going to spend most of your fab budget on just to get onto your roster, whether you've got running back need or not. So I like Madison there. I think that's a good pick. Leading off the round, I'll touch on it real quick. Bryce Love, I think, is a redshirt season for him. He's sitting behind Adrian Peterson. He's sitting behind Darius Guice. For me, I think Bryce Love's a guy that I would have probably let slide down this board another couple of rounds or so. I don't foresee him really making. Yeah, I don't think he's going to really make an impact in this league for quite a while. And if he does, he's going to be like, I think he's going to probably, by the time he gets any meaningful snaps in the league, you're probably looking at a guy that's going to be like a like a Josh Adams, a guy that's going to come in and probably give you a good stretch for a 3 to 4 game period, but then that's it, and that's all she wrote for the guy. I mean, he's not going to be any guy that's going to be an outstanding player that's going to be startable in your weekly lineups, even in dynasty formats. So, not a big fan of that.
I mean, no, not at all. There's a couple of even running backs I would rather have over Bryce Love. I think Bryce Love is one of those guys he's drafted on his college name. Yep. I mean, obviously, we need to see Darius Guice and what he is going to be, at least in terms of preseason stuff. Could he not be, what he was prior to the injury? I know he's one of those guys that, I think he's going to do quite well. I think he's going to come in, but, how much of a mix does he have over Adrian Peterson? I don't know. I just don't, especially with Chris Thompson's role, I don't know where Bryce Love fits into that.
Whew, yeah, it's tough, that's for sure. But we'll kind of, we're getting up there towards about an hour on the show here, so we kind of want to lightning around the rest of this draft here real quick. Because as we tend to get on this show, as we get touching on some players, and we get a little long-winded in player descriptions and talking about players that we like and dislike. So quick shot through the remainder of this draft. Last 4 rounds. Give me a player to keep an eye on, and if possible, which this is a rookie draft, a guy that you'd probably just left off your board.
So I think a guy. I'm gonna pick out 2 guys from the last 4 rounds, and guys that I think that I'm gonna be at least kind of keeping a little bit of an eye on. At the running back position, Myles Gaskin is there at 5.8 to Miami. I think he's a guy that I think just because he's in the right situation, he's somebody I'm going to be keeping my eye on a little bit.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a little bit of a cop out again, but I really like a lot of the tight ends in this group. You got Dawson Knox in Buffalo, Foster Moreau in Oakland, Josh Oliver especially I think is probably at the top of that group in Jacksonville. Those are 3 guys just because of their situation and the offenses that they're in. They have a really good chance to get a lot of meaningful playing time in year 1. So I'm a big fan of a lot of the tight ends of this group, not necessarily Drew Sample in Cincinnati there, but I'm definitely going to be keeping my eyes on these tight ends and again, Myles Gaskin.
Yeah, I like the Gaskin one. He's kind of a player you just kind of forget about, and where he landed. He's got a chance to kind of get onto that depth chart and do some damage. If Kenyon Drake can only be like a 15 touch a game guy, and that's all they ever envision him for, he can. Yeah, you've got Gaskin gonna get out there and fill a role himself. We've seen Drake get nicked up here and there before, so Gaskin kind of jump in and create himself some extra snaps in that offense, and definitely be something. I agree there. That's for me.
Let me guess. You're going to go Karan Higdon.
Yeah. In a way, I like the Higdon pickup by the Texans just because we almost all know it's all said and done for Lamar Miller after this year, but I'm probably going to die on the heel of Deontay Foreman, just for the sheer fact of how much I think he can really be a player in fantasy football if you give him meaningful snaps and you give him a good run with the majority of the carries in this backfield. So for me, Higdon's going to be a guy that could come in and be a change of pace guy, and that's about it. He could be Alfred Blue for the Texans. And I mean, take that for what you will. I mean, Alfred Blue's a guy that can come in and, like what I'd mentioned with Josh Adams, he can be a guy that can come in and give you a good game here and there and possibly potentially win you a week, put you in better positioning for the playoffs, things like that, this here and there. But I mean, I don't think he's, from my own personal opinion, I see Foreman as a guy that's going to lead that backfield going forward for the Texans once Lamar Miller is gone. I think they're really going to give him a good, solid run with that ball next year, especially. I mean, that's a 2020 outlook on Deontay Foreman. But for me, a pick that I like Scott Miller. It's a guy that's growing on me. The more and more I look into him, and the more and more I kind of start picking up things with him. Scott Miller to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think, is a replacement for Adam Humphries. I think he's going to be a guy that they're going to find ways to get him involved in the offense. It might not show dividends early on in the year, but as the year progresses and he gets really acclimated into the team, I think Miller's going to be a guy that you're going to probably pull off of the waiver wire in redrafts and PPR formats. But for me, he's a guy, I mean, if I'm picking him there in the 6th round of a rookie draft, at that point you're throwing a dart at the wall anyways. And if he hits, I mean, you've hit a home run with your selection in the 6th round. So Miller's going to be a guy to keep an eye on, just like we mentioned with Deontay Johnson. Watch him in the preseason, see how he really kind of finds a role on this team. Is it going to be strictly like special teams guy early on, or is he going to be the wide receiver 3 and play a lot out of the slot? It's going to remain to be seen here with a Scott Miller type for me. But
who's your guy that you would probably just leave off your board entirely out of these?
I mean, 2 picks that I love the 2 of the picks that I love. I love the player, but I hate the landing spot. Was the selection of Rodney Anderson and Travion Williams, both to the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, they both are going to be playing from behind to Joe Mixon, who, I mean, let's be honest, they're wanting him to be a workhorse for that offense. So that there tells you that there's not going to be really many snaps to be had for 2 players. And then not to mention you got Gio Bernard out there in a 3rd down role. So where are the touches coming from for either one of these 2 players? Like I said, Rodney Anderson's a guy that, had he went to like a Buffalo or something like that, I would probably have this guy. I'd have Rodney Anderson as an end of the 1st round type player. But with the landing spot, it's going to be hard for me to even pull the trigger on either one of those 2 running backs. So, I mean, will they be there? Could I take a chance on them and draft them? Yes, but will I? Probably not. I mean, there'll be guys that I'll probably overlook. If for me in a rookie draft, if I have Joe Mixon, I'll make a selection with one of those 2 guys. But if I'm not a Joe Mixon owner, I'm probably going to steer clear.
Yeah, let's face it. I mean, whatever guy, who, especially if you're in a dynasty format, if you've got the number 1 guy and your team, just in this example, you have Joe Mixon, you almost got to go out and go get a Rodney Anderson. You got to keep that. You got to keep that train going there to having the number 1 guy in a format, or especially if somebody gets hurt. I mean, how many times has a running back played all 16 games? For a team the last couple of years, it doesn't happen anymore. You got to go out and you got to have the backup. So especially too, and it's probably guys that I would leave off the board because I don't have Ezekiel Elliott, but probably both of the Dallas running backs here, Mike Weber and Tony Pollard, I'm probably not going to be drafting.
I would probably take a shot on Pollard, but
I'd take a Pollard over Weber.
Well, I mean, yeah, since you don't follow the Cowboys really very much at all, obviously, and plus with it being off season and you've got work going on with baseball and everything too. So, yeah, Mike Weber, I haven't heard anything new coming out of Dallas or anything at all, but he did get hurt in practice last week. Had to go in for an MRI on the knee, which is never a good thing. So more than likely, we're losing Mike Weber for an extended period of time. That will be we will update you on as we get further down the road. But of course, that's something to follow on Twitter as well. I'm sure news to that extent will be popping up all over the place. But yeah, Mike Weber's going to be a guy that probably not getting drafted in rookie drafts right now as it stands, with the injury that has crept up in early practices and the OTAs. So, and then that pretty much wraps it up for the rookie mock draft show. We just kind of wanted to go over it, the RotoBaller rookie mock draft, just to touch on some of the players, things like that. Next show, if it's completed in time, we'll probably go over the half-point PPR redraft mock that I'm currently involved in with the rest of the RotoBaller guys right now. That one's a 12-team draft, and we're doing it on a slow draft format. So going through and completing that process, if it's done within the next few days, then we'll hop on and we'll talk about it. But other than that, we'll find something to talk about on this show. That's one thing I don't ever worry about, is we can always get on here and spew a few things and see what we can come up with and present it to you guys out there in a means to try to help you win your fantasy leagues, whether it be a dynasty format, whether it be a PPR, whether it be a standard scoring league. We're here to help you. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Any other news and tidbits that you want to throw out to the folks there, Mr. Heffley?
No, man, just ready to continue to talk some fantasy with you here. I know we're continuing to build our viewership out there, so hopefully this is helpful to you guys. If you also have any other topics you want us to go over, we're happy to do it. Talking to experienced fantasy guys out there that have kind of been through the rung over the years. So it sounded like I know Brandon and I wanted to talk more on the rookies and dynasty side that seemed to strike a chord with folks out there a couple of weeks ago. So definitely wanted to keep in on that. So
definitely so. So plug them again real quick, sbffc.com. Go check the website out. Get ready for the big main event in Bowling Green, Kentucky this year. We're ready to take on all comers to that draft. Whether you want to pop in and do the Friday Night League with us, whether you want to come in and do the big show that comes at you on Saturday, August the 17th, we'll be glad to have you there. We will be podcasting again this year from the big main event as well, so you'll have a chance to come by and say hi, perhaps be on the show. Go to sbffc.com to get your team signed up there. And then also mention FanDuel real quick. It's a sponsor that we've not really mentioned the last couple shows while we've been on here. Getting geared up for fantasy football season. If you've never started an account with FanDuel, definitely go in and do that. Put in the promo code WooFantasy. We'll get you set up there, get you some extra cash to start your FanDuel experience off with as well. And as things are starting to progress, we're getting things started with the draft kit over at rotoballer.com. So go over there and check that out. We're throwing out articles daily talking about some fantasy football, whether it be dynasty, whether it be redraft. Go check us out over there at rotoballer.com. And then for Mr. Heffley there, your Twitter handle for the folks out there in the Twitterverse.
The best name possible, maybe. The Real FF Goat.
I don't know about all that, but
hey.
The Real FF Goat for you guys out there. Of course, the show's podcast, the podcast account is woo_fantasy. I, myself, am the Roto Superstar himself on Twitter as well.
Oh, and by the way, hey, before we get off here, man, we got a shout out last week. It's one of the top new and upcoming fantasy podcasts you should follow. So kudos to all you listeners, and hope we got some first timers out there. From the retweet.
Yeah, we got a retweet from Mr. Jim Day himself, Fantasy Taz, a guy that I've actually done a little bit of work with and talked to here and there. Back in my Roto Expert days, we both were a member of that site, so we had some time together there as well. And so yeah, he did throw out a retweet with us as far as a podcast to follow and keep up with as we get you prepared. So I appreciate that shout out. That goes a long way. Gets extra ears and listeners to the product. So I'm all for that. But yeah, things wrapped up. be going to look forward to talking to you guys again this next week. And I guess speaking for Mr. Nick Heffley himself there, we're going to give you guys a big old woo!
Woo!
Fantasy! We'll see you guys next week.